Avery Marshall closed her presentation file with a satisfying click. The flight back from Chicago was exceptionally smooth, but the turbulence of her thoughts made up for the calm journey. She had decided to return a day early, eager to confront Ethan about her decision to refuse the inheritance from Uncle Frederick Startling. The idea was simple, yet Avery knew the implications would be profound. She wanted to test Ethan, to see if his proclaimed love was genuine or merely anchored in the financial benefits she brought. Landing, taxiing, the familiar drive to the house they shared, it all felt like a mechanical sequence, each step bringing her closer to a revelation that could forever change her life. As she slid the key into the lock of their home, Avery felt a shiver run down her spine, not from cold, but from anticipation. Upon entering, she was immediately greeted by the familiarity of their home, the carefully chosen furniture, family photographs on the walls, and the mixed sense of cleaning products and Ethan's lingering cologne in the air. But something was amiss. Laughter floated to her, emanating from Ethan's office. Ethan's voice was unmistakable, but there was another. A female voice, unfamiliar and intriguing. Curious yet cautious, Avery followed the sound, her shoes making the faintest noise on the thick carpet. She paused at the slightly ajar door of the office, her heart pounding. The voices inside became clearer. And then, with the inheritance, we could finally leave everything behind, Cassidy, Ethan was saying, a tone of barely contained excitement in his voice. Just imagine, no financial worries to bother us, just you and me. The response came with a light, seductive laugh. Oh, Ethan, that sounds like a dream. But Avery, will she really agree to give up all this? You know how she is about the moral side of things. Avery's grip on the doorknob tightened, her fingers whitening from the force. The shock of hearing another woman discuss her future with her husband rooted her to the spot. Ethan sighed, a sound of frustration that Avery knew all too well. Avery can be persuaded. She trusts me, perhaps too much. Once the inheritance is in our hands, we'll buy that business of yours, and we'll fly to the West Coast. It'll be a new beginning. Cassidy laughed again, the sound more cutting than joyful. You're a genius, love. But what if she finds out about us? Us? There is no us in her eyes. Cassidy Lane, the up-and-coming businesswoman who will offer us a great business opportunity. That's all Avery will see. By then, it'll be too late. Avery felt a wave of nausea and betrayal surge through her throat. Ethan's plan was not just a betrayal, it was a complete setup, and Cassidy was at the heart of it all. Silently, she stepped back, Ethan's words echoing in her mind. Avery did not confront Ethan immediately. Instead, she needed a plan, something to expose his lies without giving him a chance to retract. Moving out of earshot, Avery pulled out her phone and typed a quick message to Brooke, her dependable friend. Need to see you. Urgent. Something big has happened. With the pieces of her life suddenly thrown into disarray, Avery knew the next step would determine not only her future but how she viewed herself in the mirror of morality and truth. The truth about Ethan, the truth about their life together, it was all at stake, and she was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the truth and a newly discovered determination to seek justice and redemption. And with that, Avery was preparing to confront not just a husband's betrayal but the very foundations of her life. Ethan was seated at his desk, papers scattered in front of him when Avery silently entered the office. He looked up, clearly surprised, but quickly masked his reaction with a forced smile. Avery, you're back early, he began, rising and walking towards her with open arms, attempting to embrace her. She subtly stepped back, maintaining a safe distance. Yes, I finished everything I needed to do, said Avery, her voice firm, though her palms were sweating. Ethan, can we talk? About Uncle Frederick's inheritance. Ethan hesitated for a moment, a flash of panic crossing his eyes before he recomposed his expression. Of course, love, of course. What do you want to know? She watched him for a moment, weighing her next words. Who is Cassidy Lane, Ethan? She asked directly, cutting to the chase. Ethan choked slightly, clearly caught off guard. Cassidy. Oh, she's a businesswoman I met at a networking event. We are discussing a business opportunity, a potentially lucrative investment. An investment? Avery crossed her arms, her suspicion growing. And why would I hear you talking about running away with her? Is that part of the business, Ethan? He stumbled again over his words, a flush of guilt rising up his neck. Avery, you must have misunderstood. We were just discussing different scenarios for the investment. You know, exploring all the possibilities. She kept her gaze fixed on him, trying to read between the lines of his clearly tattered defense. Exploring all the possibilities doesn't include running away with her, Ethan. I want the truth. Now. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. The truth is that I was trying to impress her. I wanted her to think I had the resources to invest. Nothing more, he said, attempting to appear sincere. Avery felt a wave of anger and disappointment, but she kept her voice calm. And what else haven't you told me, Ethan? Are there more impressions you are trying to pass around without telling me? Ethan sighed, lowering his guard a bit. No, Avery, I swear. That's all. I just wanted to do something to get us out of this financial situation. To do something big, you know. Avery looked at him, the man she had shared so many years with, now a stranger full of secrets and lies. She knew she needed more answers, solid evidence before deciding her next step. I need some time to think about all this, Ethan. Please, do not contact me until I reach out, she said, turning to leave the office, her mind already spinning with plans on how to uncover the full truth. Ethan was left behind, a look of concern etched on his face as Avery walked away. He knew the line he had crossed might be the end of everything they had built together. As Avery walked through the silent corridors of their home, she picked up her phone and dialed Brooke's number. Brooke, I need your help. Something big is happening, and I need to find out how deep it goes. Can you meet me tomorrow? Of course, Avery, came Brooke's ready response, her voice filled with concern. What's going on? I'll tell you everything tomorrow. I need someone to help me investigate Ethan and this Cassidy Lane. Hanging up the phone, Avery felt the weight of the revelations still to come. But she was determined to find out how far Ethan's lies extended. And she would start by gathering all the information possible on Cassidy Lane. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, Brooke Saunders shut her laptop, sensing a storm brewing. She knew that when Avery Marshall set out to uncover the truth, nothing would stand in her way. Tomorrow would be a long day. The morning was gray and cool when Avery met Brooke at a discreet cafe, away from prying eyes that might recognize them. Sitting at a corner table, Avery looked exhausted, her eyes heavy with the burden of the revelations and suspicions she carried. Brooke, always perceptive, immediately noticed the tension in her friend. Avery, you look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. Talk to me, she said, taking Avery's hand across the table. Avery sighed, her eyes wandering over the steam rising from her coffee cup before settling on Brooke. I don't know where to start, Brooke. Everything feels so surreal. Ethan and this woman, Cassidy, planning to use Uncle Frederick's inheritance to run away together. Brooke frowned, her mind working quickly. Are you sure about what you heard, Avery? I mean, could there be some explanation? No, Avery interrupted, shaking her head firmly. The things they said, it was clear as day. They were planning it all behind my back. And now, Ethan can barely look me in the eyes without tripping over his own lies. Brooke squeezed Avery's hand, offering a supportive grip. Well, then we need a plan, Avery. You need concrete evidence before you confront him again or take any legal action. And more importantly, we need to find out everything about this Cassidy Lane. Who she really is, what she wants with Ethan, everything. Avery nodded, her mind already forming the outlines of a plan. Yes, you're right. I need to know how deep this web of lies goes. But how? Ethan is cunning. He'll suspect if I start asking questions now. Brooke smiled, a cunning glint in her eyes. Leave that to me, Avery. I have some contacts that can help us learn more about Cassidy without raising suspicions. And as for Ethan, maybe it's time for you to make your own move. My own move? Avery looked at Brooke, puzzled. Yes, Brooke continued, her tone low and conspiratorial. Make him think you are considering accepting the inheritance. See how he reacts, what he suggests. It might give us more insight into his true plans and might even lead him to reveal more than he should. Avery pondered this, the weight of disappointment mixing with the need to act. It's risky, she murmured. But you're right. It's the only way I'll know the full truth. Brooke nodded, satisfied. I'll start making some calls as soon as we leave here. Let's find out everything we can about Cassidy first. As for you, get ready for the performance of your life with Ethan. They spent some more time discussing details and strategies, reinforcing their resolve and friendship. As they stood to leave, Brooke gave Avery a tight hug. We'll get through this, Avery. You're stronger than you think, and you have me. Ethan won't know what hit him, Brooke said, her voice filled with fierce confidence that Avery found contagious. Leaving the cafe, Avery felt a new wave of determination coursing through her. She was ready to face whatever was necessary to protect herself and her son from Ethan's schemes. With Brooke by her side, she felt she could weather any storm. Meanwhile, across town, Brooke began making her calls, her mind focused on unraveling the true identity and intentions of Cassidy Lane. The next chapter of this saga was about to begin, and Avery knew that the truth would be revealed, no matter the cost. Avery Marshall had arranged the meeting with Cassidy Lane at a sophisticated cafe in downtown, a place that favored discretion yet still pulsed with the energy of midday. She arrived a few minutes early, choosing a secluded table with a clear view of the entrance. The plan was to observe Cassidy before being seen herself, to catch any sign that might help her better understand who she was dealing with. Cassidy arrived punctually, her posture confident and a charming smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She scanned for Avery, who waved discreetly. As they approached each other, Cassidy extended her hand with a confidence that almost made Avery step back. Avery, what a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Ethan has told me so much about you, Cassidy said, her melodic voice filling the space between them with a false cordiality. The pleasure is mine, Cassidy, Avery responded, maintaining a neutral tone while observing every gesture and expression of the other woman. Ethan mentioned you are exploring some quite interesting business opportunities. I'm intrigued. Cassidy smiled, sitting down across from Avery. Oh yes, we are very excited about the potential. Actually, it's a project that could revolutionize the specific industry market. With the right investment, of course. Avery leaned forward, feigning interest. And what kind of investment are you looking for? I'm always on the lookout for promising projects to place my capital. Well, we are talking about a considerable sum, Cassidy began, unfolding a folder she had brought with her. But the return is undoubtedly more than worth it. Moreover, with the inheritance Ethan mentioned you might be receiving, it could be an excellent use for part of those funds, don't you think? Avery felt her stomach tighten as she heard how Cassidy casually insinuated using the inheritance, as if it were a foregone conclusion. Yes, the inheritance is a possibility, Avery continued, keeping her voice carefully neutral. But, of course, I would like to know more about the details of your project before making any commitments. Cassidy seemed more than ready to discuss the details, presenting charts and projections that, to any seasoned investor, would appear superficially impressive. However, for Avery, who had a solid understanding of business, much of the information seemed fluff and lacking substance, confirming her suspicions that the so-called company was just a facade for the planned escape. You mentioned partnerships and other investors, Avery probed, watching Cassidy closely. "Who else is involved in this project?" Well, at the moment, it's quite confidential information. But Ethan is very involved. He truly believes in the potential of what we are building here," Cassidy responded, clearly trying to maintain an aura of exclusivity. Avery nodded, the final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "I see. Well, Cassidy, I will certainly consider everything you have presented today. Do you have a complete business plan I could review?" Cassidy hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty passing through her eyes before she regained her composure. "Of course, I can send you all the relevant documents by the end of the day." "Perfect," Avery concluded, her polite smile masking the inner turmoil. "I'm looking forward to taking a closer look." They said their goodbyes with Cassidy still radiant with confidence, not realizing that Avery had unraveled far more than she intended to reveal. As Cassidy walked away, Avery pulled out her phone, quickly typing a message to Brooke. "We need to talk. Things are deeper than we thought." As Avery left the cafe, she knew her next conversation with Brooke would be crucial. They would need to act quickly now that Cassidy and Ethan's intentions were clear. Avery was ready to confront not just the betrayal, but also to protect what was rightfully hers, starting with her son's well-being and her own financial security. On her way to meet Brooke, Avery felt determination harden within her. This battle was just beginning, and she was armed with the truth. The afternoon was fading into shades of gray when Avery Marshall arrived at the residence of Elaine Harper. The house, always impeccably tidy and welcoming, today seemed a reflection of the emotional turmoil Avery was carrying with her. She took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell, bracing herself for the difficult conversation she was about to have. Elaine opened the door with a smile that quickly faltered when she saw the grave expression on Avery's face. "Dear, what a surprise! Come in, please. Is something wrong?" Elaine asked, guiding Avery into the living room. "Elaine, we need to talk about Ethan," Avery began, her voice firm but laden with deep sadness. "There are things you need to know." Elaine, sensing the seriousness of the moment, sat down stiffly. "What has happened with my son?" Avery took a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I've discovered that Ethan is involved in some very disturbing plans. He's having an affair and planning to use an inheritance I'm supposed to receive to run away with his mistress." Disbelief swept across Elaine's face. "No, that can't be true. Ethan wouldn't do something like that. You must be mistaken, Avery." "I wish I were, Elaine. I heard him and the woman, Cassidy Lane, talking about it. They were planning to use the money to start a new life together, far from here." Elaine's hands trembled slightly as she processed the words. "And why would he do that? Why would he risk everything?" "I don't know," Avery admitted, the pain evident in her voice. "But I saw the evidence, Elaine. I saw messages, heard their conversations. It's real." Elaine stood up abruptly, a mix of anger and despair in her eyes. "I need to hear this from him. I need Ethan to tell me this himself." Together, they went to Ethan's company, a heavy silence hanging between them. Upon arriving, Elaine confronted her son, her face a mask of determination. "Ethan, tell me it's not true. Tell me you're not cheating on Avery, that you're not planning to take her money and run." Ethan, caught off guard by his mother's presence and the accusation, initially stuttered, guilt evident on his face. "Mom, it's complicated. I was just trying to." "Don't give me excuses, Ethan. I want the truth," Elaine demanded, her voice shaking with emotion. "Yes, it's true," Ethan finally admitted, lowering his gaze. "I got involved with someone, and we thought about starting something new. But, Mom, I was doing it for us, to get us out of the financial situation we're in." "For us," Elaine repeated, the disgust clear in her voice. "Betraying your wife, lying to everyone who loves you, that's for us?" Ethan had no response, his feeble justification crumbling under his mother's scrutiny. Elaine turned to Avery, her next words heavy with resolve. "Avery, I am so sorry. Truly. I never imagined my son could do something like this. What can I do to help make this right?" Avery looked at Elaine, seeing the sincerity and sorrow in the older woman's eyes. "I think the first thing we need to do is make sure he can no longer harm us. We need to protect what's yours, Elaine, and what's mine." Elaine nodded, the resolution set on her face. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll protect our family, Avery, even if it means protecting it from my own son." The two women, now united in their resolve, began to discuss the next steps, preparing for the legal and emotional battles ahead. Elaine, once deceived by her son's facade, was now ready to face the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ethan was beginning to realize the magnitude of what he was about to lose, and the price his betrayal would truly cost. Elaine Harper's home had always been a refuge for Nolan Marshall, especially during turbulent times. The young teenager, though still in the bloom of youth, possessed a keen sensitivity to the emotions of those around him. The growing tension between his parents had not escaped him, and visits to his grandmother's house had become more frequent and necessary for his own peace of mind. On a particularly chilly afternoon, as the wind rustled the leaves of the old oak in the backyard, Nolan sat at Elaine's kitchen table, a steaming cup of hot chocolate in front of him. Elaine, noticing her grandson's thoughtful look, gently placed her hand over his. "Nolan, dear, you seem troubled today. Would you like to talk about it?" she asked with a soft, encouraging voice. Nolan sighed, his eyes meeting his grandmother's. "Grandma, I feel like something bad is happening. Mom and Dad have been arguing a lot, haven't they? They try to hide it, but I know something isn't right." Elaine squeezed Nolan's hand, her heart heavy with the sadness of seeing her grandson so concerned. "Yes, my dear, they have been going through a difficult time. But I want you to know that both your mother and I are doing everything we can to sort things out." "But what exactly is going on, Grandma? Mom doesn't want to tell me much, and I just want to understand," Nolan insisted, the need to comprehend clear on his young face. Elaine pondered for a moment, deciding how much of the truth to share with Nolan, protecting him but also respecting his desire to understand. "Well, Nolan, sometimes people make mistakes, big mistakes, that can hurt those they love. Your father, he got involved in something he shouldn't have, something that hurt your mother a lot." Nolan frowned, processing the words. "Are you saying Dad did something bad?" "Yes, he did. But it's important for you to know that we all, including your father, are human and sometimes fail. What really matters is how we handle those mistakes, how we try to make things right," Elaine explained, trying to impart a life lesson through the painful reality they were facing. "I understand, Grandma, but I hate seeing Mom so sad. And I hate that Dad did something to hurt her," Nolan said, sadness tinting his words. "I know, my love, I know," Elaine replied, feeling a mix of pride and pain for Nolan's maturity. "But now, more than ever, your mother needs you. Your love and your support. And, as hard as it may be, your father also needs to understand that you care about what happens to him. That might help him find his way back." Nolan nodded, somewhat comforted by his grandmother's words. "I'll try, Grandma. I'll try to be strong for Mom and talk to Dad too. Maybe if he knows I care, he might change." Elaine smiled, moved by her grandson's resolve. "That's very mature of you, Nolan. Remember, I'm here for whatever you need, always." As their conversation ended, Elaine felt renewed hope in Nolan's strength. Together, perhaps they could help Ethan see the error of his ways and bring some sense of unity back to their fragmented family. As the afternoon gave way to evening, Nolan left his grandmother's house with a new sense of purpose. He knew that the upcoming conversations with his parents would be some of the most important of his young life. Meanwhile, Elaine watched him leave, a silent prayer in her heart that the family would find their way through this storm. The autumn wind whispered through the trees as Avery drove to the home of her cousin, Tyler Benson. He lived in a quiet area, his modest house adorned with adaptive equipment that facilitated his mobility and independence. Tyler, despite his physical limitations due to cerebral palsy, possessed a sharp mind and a resilient spirit that Avery had always admired. Upon arrival, Tyler greeted her with a warm smile. "Avery, it's always good to see you. Please come in," he said, moving with the help of his crutches. Avery followed Tyler into the living room, where they settled comfortably. "Tyler, I came to talk about something important," Avery began, her expression serious. "It's about Uncle Frederick's inheritance." Tyler tilted his head, curious. "What about the inheritance?" "I've been thinking a lot, and I want you to be the beneficiary of it," Avery declared, watching Tyler's reaction closely. Tyler looked surprised, his eyebrows arching in disbelief. "Me? But Avery, why? I mean, that's very generous of you, but why me?" "Because you deserve it, Tyler. You have so many plans, so many ideas that could benefit many. And I know you would make wise use of that money. Much more than I would," Avery explained, her voice full of conviction. Tyler was silent for a moment, digesting the news. "Avery, that could really change a lot for me. I could expand my accessibility projects, maybe even start my own foundation." "Exactly," Avery smiled, encouraged by Tyler's response. "And that's what Uncle Frederick would have wanted. Someone who used his inheritance to do good." As they discussed the possibilities the inheritance would bring, Avery didn't mention her concerns about Ethan and his dubious plans. She wanted this moment to be about possibilities and hope, not about the shadows that haunted her family. However, far away, Ethan was learning about Avery's decision through an overheard conversation he shouldn't have heard. His expression twisted in frustration as he spoke on the phone with Cassidy. "Cassidy, Avery wants to give the inheritance to Tyler." "All our plans are crumbling," Ethan hissed, anger bubbling in his voice. "What? But that can't happen, Ethan." "We need that money," Cassidy responded, her tone equally tense. I know, but I don't know what to do." "Avery is determined. We need a new plan fast," Ethan insisted, beginning to pace back and forth in his office. "Leave it to me. I'll think of something and let you know." "We can't let this stop us," said Cassidy, trying to maintain a facade of confidence. Ethan hung up the phone, his thoughts swirling in chaos. He knew he had to act quickly if he wanted to save his scheme from vanishing along with the inheritance that was within his grasp. As Avery and Tyler discussed future charitable projects, Ethan planned his next move. The battle for Uncle Frederick's legacy was just beginning, and neither party was willing to back down without a fight. Twilight painted the sky in deep hues as Avery finalized preparations for the most crucial dinner of her life. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the arrangement of the chairs to the choice of menu, designed to create a calm and inviting atmosphere despite the whirlwind of emotions she anticipated. Avery walked through the dining room, adjusting a vase of flowers here, smoothing a tablecloth there, while mentally rehearsing the speech she would make. She had gathered documents, text messages, and emails that corroborated Ethan's machinations, all impeccably organized in a thick folder resting on the sideboard. Elaine arrived first, with a tense expression that softened slightly upon seeing Avery. "Dear, how are you feeling?" Elaine asked, approaching for a tight hug. "Prepared, I hope," Avery responded, offering a smile that attempted to mask her anxiety. "Thank you for being here, Elaine. Your support means a lot to me." "I wouldn't be anywhere else," Elaine stated, holding Avery's hands in hers. "We'll get through this together." Soon after, Tyler and Brooke arrived together, bringing a supportive energy into the room. "We're with you, Avery," Brooke said, while Tyler nodded in agreement. "Thank you both. I don't know what I'd do without you," Avery thanked them, guiding them to the dining room. When Ethan arrived, the tension in the air became palpable. He looked around, noting the determined and serious gazes directed at him, and a flicker of concern passed across his face. "Avery, what's going on? Why is everyone here?" he asked, trying to maintain a facade of calm. "Let's have dinner and then we'll talk," Avery replied, maintaining control of her voice. She led everyone to the table, where each person took their place, Ethan visibly uncomfortable under everyone's scrutiny. During dinner, casual conversations filled the air, but there was an undercurrent of tension that could not be ignored. Avery remained composed, focused on her objective. As soon as dessert was served and the last dishes were cleared, she stood up, clearing her throat. "Ethan, there's something important we need to discuss," Avery began, all eyes turning to her. "There are issues that have arisen, issues that affect all of us here." Ethan swallowed hard, looking around the table at the expectant faces of friends and family. "Avery, what do you mean?" he asked, a slight tremor in his voice. Avery opened the folder of documents, pulling out the first few pages. "I've learned about your plans, Ethan. About you and Cassidy Lane. About what you intended to do with the inheritance I was supposed to receive." She distributed copies of the documents to everyone at the table, including emails and text messages detailing Ethan's plan. Ethan stared at the papers in front of him, his expression crumbling as the evidence of his betrayal was laid bare. "Avery, I can explain," he started, his voice weak. "Let's hear it," Avery said firmly, sitting back down as Ethan struggled to formulate a defense under the judgmental gazes of everyone around the table. As Ethan attempted to explain himself, the alliances in the room strengthened, all united by Avery, prepared to support her through the revelations and consequences that would follow. It was a battle of truths and loyalties, and Avery was determined to emerge justified. The soft lights in Avery's dining room cast a warm glow over the elegantly set table, contrasting with the chill that settled among the guests. The sound of cutlery against plates provided a nervous accompaniment to the accelerated heartbeats of everyone present. Avery, maintaining her composure, watched Ethan intently as he struggled to assimilate the evidence laid out before him. Beside her, Elaine seemed to shrink with each spoken word, her expression a mix of pain and disbelief. "Ethan," Avery began, her voice clear and controlled, cutting through the anxious murmur filling the room, "these documents you see here show not only your infidelity but also your plan to use the inheritance in a way you know to be dishonorable." Ethan looked at the documents spread out before him, his face pale. "Avery, I can explain. It's not what it looks like. Cassidy and I." He stammered, unable to form a coherent defense. Cassidy, in turn, looked from side to side, clearly uncomfortable and perhaps surprised by the extent of the evidence. "Ethan told me you were on board with investing in the business, Avery. He never said it was something done behind your back," she interjected, trying to distance herself from the more severe implications of the accusations. Avery turned her penetrating gaze to Cassidy. "So you're telling me you were just an innocent investor in all this?" Avery questioned, her suspicion evident in her voice. Before Cassidy could respond, Elaine interrupted, her voice trembling with emotion. "How could you, Ethan? How could you lie to us like this? To me?" Elaine turned to her son, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I raised you to be honest, to respect others. How could you disappoint Avery and me like this?" Ethan lowered his head, unable to meet his mother's gaze. "Mom, I'm sorry. I felt trapped. The debts, the pressure. I thought if I could solve our financial issues, we could be happy again." Avery listened to everything, each word adding weight to her already burdened heart. "Solving our problems does not justify betraying those you love, Ethan. It doesn't justify lying or manipulating." Elaine, clutching Avery's hands for some comfort, looked to Tyler and Brooke, who had until then been watching silently. "And you too. How do you feel about all this?" she asked, seeking allies in the midst of the betrayals. Tyler, always the calmest, responded first. "I'm here to support Avery. What Ethan did is inexcusable. We need to think about what's best for her and for Nolan now. Brooke agreed, her loyalty to Avery unquestionable. Ethan, you need to understand the gravity of what you've done. It's not just about money or business. It's about trust, something you've completely broken. The dinner, which began as a family gathering, had transformed into a tribunal of emotions and revelations. Avery knew the path ahead would be difficult, but she was determined to rebuild her life, away from the lies that surrounded her. As the discussion winded down and the plates were slowly cleared from the table, Avery stood up, her gaze sweeping each face. We'll need time to process all this and decide our next steps. But one thing is clear, things are going to change. Ethan, finally lifting his head, met Avery's eyes. Avery, he began, but she cut him off.
No, Ethan.
Not now. I need space and time to think. With those words, Avery left the room, followed by the supportive gazes of Brooke and Tyler, while Elaine remained seated, contemplating the extent of the damage that the night had unearthed. Dinner had ended, but the tension remained thick in the air. Feeling cornered and desperate, Ethan sought out Cassidy as soon as he found an opportunity to speak with her alone. He pulled her aside into the quiet office, away from the curious eyes of the other guests. Cassidy, we need to leave now, Ethan whispered urgently. Everything is falling apart. If we stay, the consequences will be disastrous. Cassidy, whose usual confidence had been shaken by the night's revelations and confrontations, looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with uncertainty and fear. Ethan, this is madness. You heard what everyone said. We can't just run away. And why not? Ethan retorted, his voice tinged with frustration. It's our only chance to start over, away from all this mess. Cassidy ran her hands through her hair, clearly distressed. And start how? With what money? Avery already knows everything. She could block access to the inheritance at any moment. Plus, if we get caught, we'll be in an even worse legal situation. Ethan gripped Cassidy's shoulders, looking into her eyes. I can get money. We can use the little that's already set aside. We just need time to regroup. No, Ethan, Cassidy said, stepping back decisively. I can't do this. What we were planning, it was wrong. And now, with everyone knowing, it's even worse. I can't risk my future like this. Not this way. Ethan, feeling panic rise, tried to hold her hand, his expression a mix of pleading and despair. Cassidy, please. I need you. We planned this together. Cassidy, however, shook her head, the resolution firm on her face. Ethan, what we planned was a mistake. I see that now. I need to think about my own safety, my own legal responsibilities. I'm sorry. With those words, Cassidy left the office, leaving Ethan alone with his turbulent thoughts. He sat down, the weight of reality crushing him. Without Cassidy, without the support of his family, what would he do now? He pondered his options, each path seeming darker than the last. Finally, he stood up, a forced determination taking over. I need to fix this, he muttered to himself. Somehow. Ethan walked back into the main room, where the gathering was still discussing the events of the night. He knew he had to face the consequences of his actions, starting by attempting reconciliation with Avery and his family, even though he knew it would be a difficult and perhaps impossible path. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the house, Avery was discussing with Brooke and Tyler a plan to ensure Ethan could not do further financial harm. She was determined to protect not only her integrity but also the future of her son. We'll need lawyers, Avery said, her voice laden with newfound strength. And we'll need all the documents Ethan and Cassidy used to plan this. Nothing can be left to chance. Brooke nodded, ready to support her friend every step of the way. We'll get everything you need, Avery. We'll make sure Ethan pays for what he's done. Avery took a deep breath, feeling the support of her friends. The battle would be long, but she was ready to face whatever was necessary to rebuild her life and protect her son. After dinner, the atmosphere in Avery's house remained heavy, a mix of tension and resolve hanging in the air. Elaine and Avery, having shared many difficult moments throughout the evening, now found themselves alone in the cozy living room, surrounded by books and photographs that spoke of happier times. Elaine, with a cup of tea in her hands, broke the silence. Avery, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for all of this. For Ethan, for everything he's caused. Avery, sitting across from Elaine, held her own cup, the warmth of the tea doing little to thaw the cold that had settled in her heart. Elaine, I know this has been a shock for you too. You're his mother, and this can't be easy. It's not, Elaine admitted, her eyes welling up with tears. But my heart aches more for you and Nolan. You don't deserve any of this. And I want you to know, Avery, that I'm on your side. Regardless of Ethan being my son, I support you. Avery nodded, moved by Elaine's support. Thank you, Elaine. That means a lot to me, especially now. We need to think about how we're going to protect Nolan and ourselves from further harm. Elaine set her teacup aside, her rigid posture softening slightly as she considered her next words. What do you plan to do now? Legally, I mean. I'm going to speak with lawyers tomorrow, Avery replied. We need to make sure Ethan has no access to the inheritance and that he can't do any more financial damage. And then we'll see where this takes us in terms of divorce. Elaine nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. And Nolan, how is he coping with all of this? Avery sighed, the image of her son bringing a wave of concern. He's strong, stronger than I could have hoped for. But this is affecting him, Elaine. He doesn't deserve this. None of us do. I know, dear, I know, Elaine said, reaching out to hold Avery's hand. And I'll do everything I can to help. If this terrible situation has shown us anything, it's that we need each other. Family. True family isn't just about blood ties. It's about who stands by you when things get tough. Avery managed a sad smile, touched by Elaine's words. You're right. And I'm so grateful to have you, Elaine. We'll get through this together. The two women sat together, discussing future plans and legal measures, strengthening an alliance that had been tested in the flames of betrayal and emerged stronger. They talked about how they could use the situation to educate Nolan on the importance of integrity and truth, ensuring he grew up knowing the value of character above all else. As the night wore on, Avery and Elaine solidified a plan of action, not just for the coming days, but to rebuild their lives on foundations of trust and mutual support. Together, they would face whatever came their way, with a determination to emerge not just intact, but stronger. While Elaine and Avery fortified their new alliance, elsewhere in the city, Ethan was beginning to realize the magnitude of what he was about to lose and the true cost of his betrayal. The morning after the revealing dinner, Ethan found himself sitting alone in his dimly lit office, the first light of dawn barely touching the edges of the heavy curtains. He had spent the night awake, replaying every moment of the previous evening, every accusatory word, every look of disappointment directed at him. Solitude was his only company now, along with the crushing weight of his own choices. With a heavy sigh, he picked up the phone and dialed Avery's number. After a few rings, her voice answered, firm and cautious. Ethan. Avery, I need to talk to you, Ethan began, his voice trembling. Please, can we meet? I need to try to explain, to try to make things right. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Ethan could almost feel Avery's hesitation. Ethan, what more is there to discuss? You said enough last night, she replied, her voice steady but laden with an unshakable firmness. Please, Avery, just one more time. I need to try to fix things. At least so we can coexist civilly, for Nolan's sake, Ethan pleaded, the despair coloring every word. Avery sighed, a note of weariness in her voice. All right. Let's meet at the park in an hour. It's a neutral place. Ethan quickly agreed, grateful for the chance, however fragile it might be. He dressed hastily and drove to the local park, where he found Avery sitting on a bench under the autumn trees, the fallen leaves painting the ground in hues of fire and gold. Approaching hesitantly, Ethan sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Avery, I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted things to come to this," he began, his hands trembling slightly. Avery looked at him, her eyes filled with deep sadness but also resolution. "Ethan, your apologies, though necessary, don't change what happened. You chose your actions. You chose to deceive and manipulate the people who loved you the most." Ethan lowered his head, shame consuming him. "I know, and I will live with that regret for the rest of my life. But please, believe me when I say that I want to do whatever it takes to repair the damage. I want to be someone Nolan can look at and not feel disgust." Avery observed him for a long moment, pondering his words. "Ethan, rebuilding the trust you destroyed will take time. A lot of time. And it depends not just on words, but on consistent and honest actions. For now, I think the best thing for us, especially for Nolan, is to keep our distance. He needs stability and honesty, things you need to learn to offer again." Ethan swallowed hard, accepting the harsh truth in her words. "I understand. And I will do everything I can to be the person Nolan deserves, even if it means doing it from afar." Avery nodded, standing up from the bench. "I'll be watching for those changes, Ethan. For now, it's best if we focus on living our lives separately." Ethan watched her walk away, each step reinforcing the reality of his situation. He had lost everything due to his choices, and now faced a long road to redemption, possibly a solitary one. As Avery walked away, head held high and heart heavy, she knew the decisions made here would define her and Nolan's future. She was ready to rebuild, to create a new beginning not just for herself but also for her son. And somewhere within her, a spark of hope began to glow, promising new days and new possibilities. After the painful breakup with Ethan, Avery found herself on the brink of a new chapter in her life. She contemplated the future, not just for herself but for those she could help with the resources now under her control. Sitting in her home office, surrounded by stacks of papers and legal documents related to the inheritance, Avery sketched out plans for her latest venture. She picked up the phone and called Tyler. He answered after just 2 rings, his voice always calm and encouraging. "Hi, Avery. How are you?" "I'm doing well, Tyler, all things considered. But I'm especially excited about an idea I'd like to discuss with you," Avery began, her voice vibrating with renewed energy. "Oh, I'm curious. Tell me more," Tyler responded, the interest clear in his voice. Avery took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. "I've been thinking about Uncle Frederick's inheritance and how I really want it to be used for something meaningful. Something that goes beyond me and can make a real difference." "That sounds incredible, Avery. What do you have in mind?" Tyler asked, clearly enthusiastic. "I want to create a foundation that helps people with special needs, providing resources, education, and support. And I'd like to name it in your honor, if you're okay with that." "The Tyler Benson Foundation for Inclusion and Access," Avery explained, each word saturated with conviction and purpose. Tyler was silent for a moment, clearly moved. "Avery, that would be an enormous honor. Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Avery affirmed. "You are an inspiration, Tyler. Your resilience, your determination to face challenges. I can't think of a better representative for what I want to achieve with this foundation." "Then yes, I would love to help in any way I can." "Let's do this together," Tyler agreed, his voice full of emotion. In the days that followed, Avery worked tirelessly, consulting lawyers, financial planners, and charity experts to structure the foundation. She organized meetings with stakeholders and support groups to better understand the needs of the community she intended to serve. Elaine, always a pillar of support, joined Avery in many of these meetings, offering her wisdom and encouragement. You are doing something wonderful, Avery, Elaine said during a brainstorming session. Turning this pain into something so positive is the most powerful thing you could do. Avery smiled at Elaine, grateful for her constant presence. I feel like this is just the beginning, Elaine. There is so much we can do, so much potential for change. With the plan finalized, Avery organized a launch event for the foundation, inviting the local community, potential donors, and the press. The event was a resounding success, with many expressing their support and admiration for the foundation's mission. As Avery addressed the guests, speaking passionately about the goals and vision of the Tyler Benson Foundation, she felt a profound sense of purpose. The pain of betrayal had been transformed into a driving force for good, and as she looked at Tyler's smiling face in the crowd, she knew that despite everything, she was on the right path. As the evening progressed, Avery knew there was much work ahead, but she was ready to face every challenge. With the foundation now a reality, she was determined to make a difference in the lives of many, beginning a new journey of healing and hope. After the successful launch of the Tyler Benson Foundation, Avery felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. For the first time in a long while, she began to look to the future not just with hope but with excitement, contemplating the new possibilities opening up in both her personal and professional life. On a clear, sunny morning, Avery walked along the lake in the city park, a place that had always brought her peace. As she watched the gentle waves on the water's surface, she reflected on the next steps in her journey. "Avery," called a familiar voice behind her. She turned to find Brooke approaching with a smile. "Brooke, what a pleasant surprise," said Avery, greeting her friend with a hug. "How are you?" "I'm good, but more importantly, how are you? After everything you've been through, you look lighter," observed Brooke as they began walking together. "I do feel lighter," Avery agreed. "I'm starting to explore new possibilities, thinking about maybe expanding my career, perhaps even going back to school. I'm considering a graduate course in nonprofit management." "That sounds amazing, Avery. You've always had a talent for leading and inspiring," Brooke responded, clearly proud of her friend. Meanwhile, Nolan was also beginning to adapt to the new reality. The transition had not been easy for him, given the drastic changes in his family, but finding strength in his mother and grandmother helped him significantly. One afternoon, he sat with Avery in the garden at home while she drank coffee and he did his homework. "Mom, I've been thinking," Nolan began hesitantly. "Yes, sweetheart." Avery put her cup aside, giving him her full attention. "I want to help with the foundation. Maybe I can do something, even though I'm young. I want to be part of this, the legacy we're building," Nolan expressed, his young face serious and determined. Avery smiled, touched by her son's maturity and generosity. "Nolan, that would be wonderful. We'll find something together. You have so many brilliant ideas, and your help would be invaluable." "I'd like that," Nolan smiled, feeling useful and part of something bigger than himself. Elaine, upon hearing this, expressed nothing but pride and support. On a visit the following weekend, she brought books on philanthropy and nonprofit management, encouraging both her granddaughter and great-grandson. "You're doing a wonderful job, Avery, and Nolan, seeing you so involved fills me with hope," Elaine said, the three of them sitting comfortably in the living room, surrounded by books and plans. As the afternoon faded into a calm evening, Avery reflected on how, despite the adversities, she had found a way to turn her pain into a purpose that not only healed her but also inspired those around her. She was ready to explore these new paths with her head held high, surrounded by the love and support of her family. With the Tyler Benson Foundation gaining momentum and her own personal and professional growth on the horizon, Avery felt that she was finally beginning to turn the page after a difficult chapter in her life. Now, more than ever, she was determined to shape a bright future for herself and Nolan, strengthened by the unbreakable bond they had formed with Elaine. The soft evening light bathed the garden where Avery had organized a small event to celebrate the early successes of the Tyler Benson Foundation. The tables were adorned with white linen cloths and delicate floral arrangements, creating a welcoming and elegant atmosphere. Guests chatted animatedly, glasses of wine in hand, while soft background music complemented the celebratory ambience. Avery, elegantly dressed, paused for a moment to absorb the scene before her. She felt a mix of gratitude and melancholy as she reflected on the past few months. The pain of betrayal still echoed in her heart, but it had been transformed into a driving force for change and growth. "You look thoughtful," observed Brooke, approaching with 2 glasses of champagne, handing one to Avery. "I'm just reflecting on everything that's happened," Avery replied, accepting the champagne with a smile. "It's amazing to see how we've managed to turn so much adversity into something so positive." Brooke nodded, looking around. "It's truly inspiring, Avery. And to think it all started in such a dark moment." Avery nodded, her eyes scanning the garden until they briefly landed on Ethan, who stood a little apart from the other guests, watching the celebration with an expression of regret and loss. The distance between them had never felt more palpable. Ethan, noticing Avery's gaze, took a hesitant step toward her, stopping halfway, as if internally struggling with whether to advance or retreat. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" Ethan asked, his voice almost inaudible over the music. Avery looked at Brooke, who subtly nodded before stepping away, giving them privacy. "Of course, Ethan," Avery said, her voice neutral but courteous. Ethan approached, his hands in his pockets, his posture uncertain. "Avery, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. Seeing what you've built here, how much you've helped so many people. It makes me realize how much I've lost. Not just you and Nolan, but a part of myself that I can never get back." Avery listened, her face impassive, but her eyes revealed the complexity of her emotions. "Ethan, your choices had consequences, and we had to learn to live with them." Ethan nodded, the weight of his decisions clearly crushing him. "I understand, and I hope that someday, maybe, we can find a new kind of peace. Not like before, but something that allows us to move forward." Avery considered his words, the sincerity in his voice hard to ignore. "Maybe, in time. But for now, I need to focus on the foundation and Nolan. That's what matters." Ethan agreed, a sad sigh escaping him. "I understand. Thank you for listening, Avery. And congratulations, truly. You've done something amazing here." He walked away, leaving Avery alone with her thoughts. She watched as he disappeared into the crowd, a man clearly transformed by the weight of his choices. Turning back to the party, Avery was surrounded by friends and family who celebrated not just the success of the foundation but the resilience and strength she had shown. Deep down, she knew that every hardship faced had been a step toward a redefined life, built on new foundations of strength and compassion. As night fell over the garden, Avery raised her glass for a toast, surrounded by those who loved and supported her. In their hearts, they shared a tacit understanding of the struggles faced and the victories won. Life would go on, full of new paths and possibilities, each forged by pain but illuminated by the hope of better days.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.